Our podcast is brought to you by We Push Back. In the last few years, a certain genre on social media has been plagued with informants who misrepresent the truth to benefit themselves. They've gone unchecked for far too long. This smoke and mirrors routine is what has plagued the criminal justice system, resulting in many wrongful convictions. We Push Back is about bringing attention to these informants who have little regard for the truth and offering a voice to all those impacted by their lies. This website will work as a united hub, bringing all related information to one portal. We Push Back.
Welcome back to A View From Mulberry Street. This is your host, Matthew Mary, and we've been busy in the last week or so going over every single podcast that we've done. And I think it's safe to say that we've published 16 so far. And we're in the process of looking back and looking forward and reviewing everything, including your comments. You know, one of the big questions on the comments is, why don't you answer our comments? And I have to sadly tell you that it's impossible for us to do that at this time because, you know, I just don't have a staff to help me along with all of that. But I'm going to try today to answer some of your comments generally and specifically when I can. This episode I call Housekeeping. What does that mean? You're going to clean up this dirty office? No, you know, actually, this place has never been cleaner. And by having this podcast, I've learned how to clean up this room pretty quickly every time we do one. But at this particular point, I believe that we're at a turning point in A View from Mulberry Street. I think it's a time for reflection. I think that it's a time to plan for the future. And when we plan, we want to plan with you. What is the purpose of this podcast? That's the one thing that I hope by now all of you know. Do you feel that you know me? Do you feel that you trust me? Do you feel that you like me? Because if all the answers are yes, then it's worthwhile to go forward and to keep doing this. And I'm hoping that I will. What do you think is important in reference to how we go forward? The first 10 episodes were on the serious side. We tried to make a point. And the point, if you boil down all the things that I've said, it all boils down to the fact that Italian-American defendants are treated differently in the federal courts. Why is that important? Why? Is it just about my clients? Oh, my clients aren't being treated fairly. Oh, no. No, it's not about that. It's about justice. Justice in America. Because when justice is denied to a whole group of people, inevitably, and I've been saying this for decades, Matthew Mary's been talking about this for decades, if you do it to one group, the people that the government defines to be the members of the mafia, if you allow the government to prostitute the system, it's going to transfer onto everyone else. And indeed, as we've gone through in the first 10 episodes of A View from Mulberry Street, there's so many situations where people who are businessmen, politicians, even clergymen had the RICO law used against them. So the first 10 episodes of this show were to make those vital points and maybe give you some new information that you never had about the federal court system, which is so important to all of our lives. During the course of even the more serious solo episodes, I tried to interject my life's experience. Being, quote, born on Mulberry Street, growing up in the 4th Ward, the Lower East Side, Knickerbocker Village. We've talked about famous people like John Gotti and Tommy Karate, Carmine Persico, Carmine Galante, and many others who I've personally known very, very well. I know that all of you want to hear more about that, but we have not and we cannot talk about everyone and everything that I know. You have to understand that whatever I have learned as a lawyer, and more importantly, anything that's been revealed to me as a person in confidence, because people trust me, can never, never, ever be revealed. Nevertheless, I can promise you that in the future, I will do my best to let you know what I can let you know. And I promise I will tell you stuff that is only real and firsthand. I've gotten a lot of requests by email and in person and in the commentaries. Can you talk more about this and talk more about that? We'll try to talk as much as we can about everything, but we're not going to talk about BS. We have a lot of topics coming up, and some of you have asked me certain issues, okay? For example, how about the families? What do I mean by that? Many, many families of clients that I've been talking about, people who've been accused of being involved in organized crime, their families have suffered immensely because of the same kind of prejudice. What do I mean? These families have suffered because their loved ones have been sentenced excessively for no reason, that they've been sent far, far away on purpose. They're unfairly, on a regular basis, denied compassionate release, even though they have served decades in prison, that they are in jail, that they are old, they are sick, and maybe be dying. I try my best not to talk on this program about cases that are in progress, but I can tell you that at this very moment, I am making a special effort to try to address that problem. And I could say off the top of my head, together with attorney Anthony DiPietro of Westchester. Anthony is the greatest legal researcher and legal writer in my lifetime. There is no one who is better, has been better, or will be better than Anthony DiPietro. He has worked with me on the Carmine Persico case. He did some work many, many years ago when he was a student for Tommy Karate. That's how I met Anthony DiPietro. And Anthony and I are getting on our horse like Don Quixote, and we're going to try to get a few very old men and sick men out of jail. I mean, we're still working on Vinny Basciano, who's not that old, and we are working at the present moment. We are working, trying to bring a lawsuit in favor of Vic Amuso, who served 30 years in prison. I think he's about 86 years old. He's very, very sick. This man needs to come home. Vic Amuso, we're trying our best to see if we can get him out. Jimmy Ida's been in jail for 26 years, okay? They offered him 10, 15 years a long time ago. He went to trial. He exercised his right to go to trial. What did they do? Bang him up. They banged him up. You dare tell the government that you're going to go to trial. I want to go to trial. So instead of offering you 10 years, they give you life without parole. That's the way the system works. But Jimmy Ida is one of the guys that we're working on to try to raise some legal issues, to try to get a man who's very, very sick. He's sick. And he's been in there since 1996. And give me a break. His case was weak, okay? And there were so many legal holes in it that it's like a Swiss cheese. So we're trying our best to get some of these old guys out. And I can assure you one thing, that and this may be a podcast in the future when I get enough evidence to try to get Alphonse Boy Persico back into court because Alphonse Persico has served over 20 years for a murder I know he did not commit. And the big problem is, after all these years, how do you get back into court when the deck was stacked against you from the very beginning? We're going to get into a lot of those things in the future as those cases develop. Those are just a few. But many people, going back to dealing with you guys out there, many people have asked me, how is it, families of people, how is it that serial street killers walk out onto the streets with little bail or no bail? And yet, if you're accused of being in the mafia, your family has to scramble to put up houses worth millions of dollars to get you in house arrest. House arrest! And I'll bet that many of you, most of you, do not know that if you're accused of being a boss, forget about the crime. It's an automatic remand. If they say in court to the judge, this man is the boss, the acting boss of a family, okay, you're automatically remanded. No bail, no circumstances are fit to allow you to be under house arrest, okay? And if you don't believe me, read the cases on it, which are ancient. The cases are U.S. v. Anthony Salerno and U.S. v. Peter Gotti. Those cases stood for the proposition I just informed you about. What happened to the Constitution? It's so hard to believe. So often when I'm in court, the families of defendants say to me, what happened to the right to bail? The right to bail. You know what? If you're a street criminal, a killer, you just walk out the door. If they say you're part of the mafia, well, there's no way for you to get out. People often ask, have I ever been the victim of prejudice because of being an Italian American? And I can tell you that I want to thank you out there for that thought, because it's something maybe I should talk about. And yes, I have been a victim of prejudice because I'm an Italian American. I think it's a little hard for me to talk about that stuff. But, we're going to bounce things around in the future to see, what else we can put on this podcast, not only to entertain you, but to enlighten you. Now, I also want to discuss in future podcasts something that's very important to me. It's what I call episodes on my alter egos. In addition to being a criminal defense lawyer, a mob lawyer, if you will, if that's what you want to call me, that's fine with me. I'm not upset about that. I've got many stories about my adventures in my alter ego world. So what does that mean? I always wanted to be a politician, but I knew at an early age that I couldn't be a politician. A gangster by the name of Tony Lisi, his real name was Gaetano Lisi. He was like a grandfather to me, and I was involved in politics when I was a little kid, and I was working for Mario Biaggi for mayor, and working for Congressman John Murphy for Congress. He was my congressman, and other politicians. And Tony Lisi said to me, he said, "Hey, Matt, what are you doing with politics?" He said, "Do you know that you can never be elected dog catcher because of your heritage, because of your ancestry?" And I kind of laughed, and I never forgot that. So I was always on the periphery of politics, but I was able to get involved with legal organizations and charitable organizations. I was the chairman of the board of directors of the Community Mayors of New York for maybe 20 years. And that was an organization that helped handicapped kids and entertained them. I was on the boards of directors of the New York County Lawyers and the New York Criminal Bar Association, where I was the vice president. I was the president of the Catholic Lawyers. I went to Cuba with Cardinal O'Connor when Pope John Paul was there. I think I'm going to do some episodes about my alter ego. I'm very, very proud also of my career as a radio talk show host for 8 years, discussing not criminal law, not the mafia and the FBI. But for 8 years, every Thursday on WVOX 1460 AM, WVOX.com, I was a talk show host until a couple of weeks ago. I had to give it up because of this podcast. I used to just talk about national and international current events. And I can tell you it was quite refreshing change for me to be able to do that. I will shock and entertain you in future episodes. But one of the things I think will delight you is that during the course of my history as a criminal defense lawyer, mob lawyer, people say about Matthew Mary, oh, Matthew Mary knows everyone. Maybe so. But in addition to all the guys that we've been talking about, Matthew Mary knows a lot of legitimate guys, okay? What does it mean to be a legitimate guy? In a future episode, I'm going to explain to you what a legitimate guy is. And I'm going to talk to you about many of the famous legitimate guys that I have met. People who are not accused of being in the mob, who I have met in the world of entertainment, like Frank Sinatra, in the world of politics, like Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, many governors and many mayors, including Rudy Giuliani. And I've met people from the world of sports, like Muhammad Ali and Mickey Mantle and Joe DiMaggio, and many, many, many others. So, in addition to planning future serious solo episodes like our first 10 that are my favorites, we have changed the pace a little bit by having interviews. And my favorite interviews so far have been Jerry Capisi, you can't beat that, Gianni Russo, who we'll talk about in a moment, and Frank Morano. We've got Murray Richmond lined up, and author Joe Bruno from Florida. In our past 2 episodes, I think it was 13 and 14 or 14 and 15, we did an on-location podcast. We split the San Gennaro Feast walk into 2 episodes, and I think we're getting a lot of great feedback on that. So we intend in the future to go on location and to explore Little Italy, Lower East Side, my humble beginnings, and a lot of other places and things to go along with the people that we're talking about. One of the things that I've been troubled by as the host of this show is our inability to answer each and every comment. We just cannot do that, right? But that is the purpose of this episode. I've gone through every single comment in the first 16 episodes. And again, I can't answer all of them, but there's some general concepts that I really can comment on. So before we close, I'd like to go into the area of comments. And I'm going to be jumping around a little bit because I'm taking the comments as I saw them. And first of all, I'd like to thank Justice Tech Pros, all right, and We Push Back, which are 2 separate organizations run by the same fellow who have really supported us from the very, very beginning. And I want to thank We Push Back for being our very first sponsor. At the end of the show, we're going to let you know how you can be a sponsor for this show. Anyhow, one of the most touching comments was from a young man, then young, probably close to my age now, Lundman from KV, okay? And I want to thank you for your comment, and thank you for admiring me when you were a little kid and I was a big kid. And I want to tell you that I remember your whole family, Susan and Carol especially, and Carol is my friend, and John, your brother, and I got to meet your mom, of course, and your dad, John, the lawyer. I'm going to say his name, John Piccarello. Great, legitimate guy. John Piccarello is a typical definition of a legitimate guy, totally legitimate from Knickerbocker Village. By the way, I once told you guys that a judge asked me once, what is this Knickerbocker Village? Is this some kind of crime college? Is this a prison? You keep telling me that your client is a friend of yours from Knickerbocker Village. Well, I've had a lot of clients from Knickerbocker Village, but Knickerbocker Village, to be honest, produced a lot of judges, a lot of lawyers, a lot of doctors, a lot of famous politicians, believe me. My neighborhood is the home of the former governor of New York, Alfred Smith, who ran for president in 1928, and there are many, many more like him out of Knickerbocker Village. So I wanted to tell you, Len, thank you for that beautiful comment. It really touched my heart because, your dad, I used to think your dad didn't like me when I was a little kid. I was kind of a rough kid, and I thought he didn't like me. Then when I grew up, I graduated from New York Law School. I met your dad, who was many years my senior, also a graduate of New York Law School, and we did business together. And he told me that he liked me as a kid. He said I was a good kid. So there you go. You never know. All right. People ask, are you still working? Are you retired? Well, let me say this. No, I am not retired. Yes, I am still working. But I have to say that I've been a criminal defense lawyer for 46 years. Thank God for my law partner, David Lee, all right, who with me has handled many, many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of personal injury cases through the years. I can tell you, without the money that I have made being a personal injury lawyer, an accident lawyer, of course, David Lee does all that work. I just go and get the cases. That has outweighed the money I've made as a criminal lawyer like 4-1. Okay, so people ask me that question, and let me tell you, many of you have the idea that criminal defense lawyers are making money hand over fist, and I have to tell you that's not true. I shouldn't complain with loaves of bread under my arms, but I have to tell you, being a criminal defense lawyer is business-wise is a lot like being a dentist pulling teeth. So for all of you out there who've asked, oh yeah, all you mob lawyers are rich. Not so. What else? Are criminal lawyers cutthroats? Are they disloyal? Are they treacherous? Will they betray each other? I can tell you firsthand. Yes, yes, yes. What else have you guys been asking? Are lawyers generally scavengers for money? Yes, especially the rich ones. Okay, there's a fellow out there named Jackie Bonds. That's some kind of nickname or a handle. So you keep commenting, do I know your dad? Do I know your dad? Do I know you? I don't know you under that name. But Jackie Bonds, I'm not that hard to find. So find me. Give me a call. Give me an email. And I'll talk to you. A lot of people keep asking me, can you tell us more stories about Lefty Guns, Benjamin Ruggiero? Can you tell us more stories about Tony Mira? Can you tell us more stories about Carmine Galante? Well, the answer is yes, 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 I can. And I will talk more about a lot of the people I've already talked about, but this is not a kind of biography program. I'm not going to do this like This Is Your Life, Carlo Gambino. This Is Your Life, Vito Genovese. I'm not doing that stuff, all right? But, you're going to hear about the people I know little by little in drips and drabs. What else? How old are you? I'm 72 years old, and I'm not ashamed. I'm proud to be 72. I'm glad to be alive. Let's put it that way. A lot of people that I've grown up with didn't make it to 72 or 62 or 42. So here I am, and happy. Question in the commentaries. Has RICO ever been approved by the Supreme Court? Believe it or not, to my knowledge, and I've asked a lot of the top appellate lawyers, the Supreme Court of the United States has never upheld RICO. What they have done is upheld it by not answering that question specifically. So all the various courts of appeals have upheld RICO, But the Supreme Court of the United States has refused to hear that, and I'm not surprised that they have. If I'm wrong on that, let me know about it. People have asked, do you know the Westies? Let me say, I know a lot of people who've been called Westies, including Jimmy Coonan, who's another guy I consider a friend of mine. Jimmy Coonan has been in jail for over 30 years. Over 30 years. He's old, he's sick, and they just won't give this guy an inch of justice. I'm not his attorney. I believe Ken Aronson is his lawyer, trying to get him out of jail after 30 years. Please. Other people that I've known who've been called Westies, who are no longer with us, great guys, who I knew as legitimate businessmen. And I'm talking about Buddy Leahy. I was sitting with a bunch of lawyers, talk about the Irish guys. Are you going to do something about the Irish guys? Are you going to do something about the Jewish gangsters? Yes, I will. But I remember being at a table with some of our personal injury lawyers at lunch one day, and they were talking about the movie Reservoir Dogs. And they were saying to me, Matt, we love that movie. It's a cult movie. Quentin Tarantino, what a great movie, but it's all make-believe. There can't really be people like that. And I said to that group of young lawyers, I said, you know what? I know at least 100, not 99, 100 Irishmen who are as crazy, who are as tough as the characters in the movie Reservoir Dogs. And I'm talking about reality. I'm talking about Buddy McLaughlin, who passed away, and many other Irish guys. Joe Coffey from my neighborhood, from Knickerbocker Village. Really tough guys. I don't want to mention anybody who's still alive. And you know who you are. And what else? On the commentaries. Let's see. I want to thank Tommy Stiggs, who has a podcast and who's always plugging me. Thanks a lot, Tommy Stiggs. And Rob Rosso, Convict Inc. You know what, Rob? You and I had a real unpleasant conversation, but at the end of it all, I like you personally. You like me personally. I don't like what one of your guests said about one of my clients. You know what that's all about. It's about Benny and Steve's a great guy, and Steve is no rat, and everybody knows that, and whoever says he's a rat is a rat. But let's not go there. Rob, I want to thank you for always on your program, Convict Inc., that you're always giving me a plug, as does Tommy Stiggs, as does, of course, always all the people in We Push Back. What else? John Chickarone and Jay Kim. Remember the episode Fulton Fish Market? One of my favorite episodes about two heroes, two legitimate guys. I'm going to explain to you, not today, what a legitimate guy is. But John Chickarone, Jay Kim, legitimate guys who stood up to the government like real heroes. They were my heroes. And people say, well, what happened to them? John Chickarone, the old man, if you guys remember the episode on Fulton Fish Market, John Chickarone pled guilty to a misdemeanor, got a $7,500 fine. Remember, the government had threatened to give him 20 years, had threatened to take away his business. They didn't. They didn't take his business. They couldn't take his business. And they threatened to put him in jail under a RICO count. He never went to jail. He got a misdemeanor. He paid $7,500 as a fine. The prosecutor asked the judge, Judge Lee Gagliardi, real famous judge. I had 3 trials in front of him. The prosecutor said, well, can you give Mr. John Chickarone probation? And the judge says, give him probation for what? He's never even spit on the sidewalk. Maybe we should give you probation. That was a great ending for John Chickarone and Jay Kim, the man from Korea who stood up for his rights and wouldn't be stepped on by the Business Integrity Commission. He stood down the Fulton Fish Market a few more years. He was successful. He went into business, in the restaurant business, became a very, very wealthy man, never to step back in the Fulton Fish Market, which eventually the government obliterated the Fulton Fish Market downtown and relocated it in the Bronx. Anyhow, what else? What else from our comments? And someone says, "You're not fair and impartial, are you?" No, I'm not fair and I'm not impartial. I have a viewpoint. It's called The View from Mulberry Street. You're hearing it now, and you're going to hear a lot more. What else? Gianni Russo. Is Gianni Russo full of embellishments? Well, I guess he is as big as he wants to be. And I can tell you, I've questioned a lot of Gianni Russo's stories as being improbable, but I've known Gianni Russo for a long time, and we've talked about these stories. You know, on my radio show up in New Rochelle, Gianni Russo was my guest twice, and he just wasn't a call-in. He took the ride up from New York City, from Manhattan, all the way up to New Rochelle. We did the show live, and going up and coming back down, I heard a million more stories from Gianni Russo, every one of them entertaining, and I've got no reason to doubt anything that Gianni Russo has said, including that he was Marilyn Monroe's lover. So, we're going to have Johnny back. And, you know, I've been on his podcast, too. I've been on Frank Morano's podcast, too. And I've done a special article that I want all of you people to look at in Gangland News. I mean, just go on that in the internet. And those are the three guests that I've had so far. And I want to let you know that in the future, we've got Murray Richmond lined up, and he's great. Oh, by the way, going back to the comments, I mentioned Marconi's Restaurant, and Jeannie, and Sonny Seeley, and Mary, and Luca, and I got a comment from Jean and Sonny's daughter, Maria. My mom was very glad to hear from you. So I think that's the end of my comments on the comments. And by the way, I want you to know that we have a homepage on YouTube, and I'd like all of you to find out how you can get that, because once I got it, I was happy to see all my episodes on one page and all the commentary, at one spot, in addition to a homepage on YouTube, which makes it very easy to see our videos. We have a website coming up, which we're going to tell you more about in the future. And I want to conclude this very short episode on housekeeping, to invite anybody out there who wants to be a sponsor for this podcast, A View from Mulberry Street, to please contact my partner, my producer, Neil Healy. And perhaps at the end of the show, Neil will give you an email address or a phone number to call. Because yes, the answer to the question, do you want sponsors? Yes, we do. I would personally prefer to have one big sponsor who pays a lot of fazools to promote our podcast and their business every week. But if we're willing to have multiple sponsors, and that's not my department. So hopefully at the end of this show, you'll get an email address or a telephone number to contact us if you want to sponsor A View from Mulberry Street. And that's it for today. This is Matthew J. Mary.